Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I really appreciate you guys all being here and coming for this video. I have to say, when we first started recording for this YouTube channel, we had no idea that people would actually watch these videos. I know that sounds silly, but at this point, over 82,000 of you have watched our original video about moving to Winnipeg and the things you needed to know before you did so. And that still remains our most popular request today. So we're sitting in 2025 and it just seemed right to redo that video, add some updates, take your feedback into account too. Most of it was very positive and enlightening. Of course, there's always the trolls, but without further ado, let's get into it and let's talk about the things you need to know before you move to Winnipeg. So a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today is actually already included in a relocation guide we created just for this reason. If you would like a copy sent to you, just send us an email. Our new team email address is hello@queenteam.ca. Our whole team really specializes in relocations at this point, from a lot of viewers that have decided from our videos that we must know what we're talking about. And they're right, we do this day in, day out. We help dozens of families relocate to Winnipeg every single year. So we put together a guide just for those in the preliminary stages, wanting to know which neighborhoods are good, wanting to know like stats about schools or income, or even what to do with pets essentially when they're moving here. We kind of took this list of all the concerns and most popular questions we find we receive, and we compiled it all into one document, and we're happy to send it to you and not spam you for the rest of your life too. So just let us know if you would like a copy of that. Again, it's hello@queenteam.ca. So there are a number of things people moving to Winnipeg really want to know before they come here. And the two most concerning, of course, and I will prioritize these to discuss about today, but the two most concerning things are crime rates as well, or I guess safety when living within this community, and also the weather, because we are known as Winterpeg. What does that really mean for you? However, I want to preface all of this with I am a Winnipeg transplant. I was not born or raised here. I moved here in my early 20s, or I guess a little bit before that, to start my university career. And I have remained. And Logan, my husband, is no different. We fell in love with the city because there is so much to love. So if you're hearing like headlines and news with negative spin toward Winnipeg, I assure you, it's not bad. In fact, it's a fabulous, fabulous place to live in. But let's get into it. I think one of the biggest concerns, especially with the new study coming out of Fraser Institute, is that of crime rates in Manitoba, in Winnipeg specifically. A new study was released that essentially shows Winnipeg as the most violent city in all of Canada. According to that study, we also happen to be twice the national average for crime in our community. This is violent crime rates per 100,000 people, so it is averaged out for population. I'm not trying to discredit the study at all because the numbers don't lie. I agree that when the study came out and I read the headlines, it was absolutely terrifying. How could we be living in such a dangerous place? But then upon further reflection, I really wanted to put this into perspective, because I think at the end of the day, what matters when you are moving to a new city is, do you feel safe in your home and in your community? Like, obviously, if you're looking over your shoulder every night as you walk down the street, that's no kind of life for anybody, right? So I think what's important is to really dive into those crime statistics a little bit more. When you look at the crime statistics in Winnipeg, a huge proportion of those crimes is gang related. There is a high component of that is also domestic abuse. So domestic abuse, while horrific and horrible and not something I would want anybody to go through, it is very localized and typically not a threat to you. Gang violence, on the other hand, yes, there are neighborhoods within Winnipeg that you are going to want to steer away from because gang activity is prevalent there and you don't want to get caught up in the crossfires of that. But really, a good realtor is going to steer you away from those areas. They're going to put you into communities in which you are safe at night when you're walking down the street and you don't have to look over your shoulder. I live in one of those communities. I would gladly go for a walk in the evening, in the summer, in the winter, anytime when it's dark out, and just feel safe within my neighborhood. And of course, if ever you want advice on which neighborhoods to steer clear of or what would be a good option for your family, let us know. That advice actually changes based on the person requesting the information, because there are communities in Winnipeg that are better suited for families, for working professionals, for individuals. So it really, there is quite a gamut. There's not just one straight list, but by all means, reach out. We're always happy to share where we think would be a good fit for you and your family. I also want to caution you that when I was reviewing these statistics, I was also looking at the United States statistics on crime. So while Winnipeg ranked really high for Canada, when you compare ourselves to our neighbors to the south, moving to Canada, you are already reducing your risk of being exposed to a violent crime by 37%. So just to put it into perspective, like, it's high for Canada, but maybe elsewhere in the world, not so high. I do want to talk though about nonviolent crime here too. Obviously, violent crime is the most concerning. People don't want to get robbed or mugged or murdered, of course, but nonviolent crime is on the rise in Winnipeg. But when I look at the statistics across all of the country and other countries, it seems to be on the rise everywhere. So when I say nonviolent crime, we're talking about perhaps like minor theft, so rummaging through cars, bicycles going missing if they're not locked up, those kinds of crimes. So annoyances for sure, but by no means violent. And sometimes it's hard to argue if it is even happening more or if we're just more aware of it because of things like our Facebook neighborhood groups, right? Where we all talk about what happened in the neighborhood, or we have cameras now with catching people that we think are doing suspicious things, which perhaps are, but they also could not be too, right? I know in our neighborhood, like Facebook group, that people are really encouraging others, like if they see a crime, to report it to the police, just because then it does get more of those police patrols through the neighborhood, so that to try and stop or deter that minor theft. So it could just be that people are reporting it more now too. Would we have reported in the past that somebody rummaged through our vehicle and stole change? Maybe not, but now that we have video cameras and everything showing it, I do feel like people are reporting more. So hard to say if those statistics are higher or more skewed just because it's more in our face nowadays, but we definitely report. I think it makes a huge difference to have a nice patrol out in your neighborhood too. But again, if we are selling you a property here, we are not selling you a property in a location that we think is dangerous for you and your family. You can absolutely get out and enjoy and feel safe. Another topic that came up a lot, and I feel I answer just in varying degrees, is affordability. We all know that Canada is becoming an expensive place to live. The world is becoming an expensive place to live. Inflation is on the rise. There are many markets that buyers are now priced out of, Toronto being one, Vancouver being another. Next to impossible to buy something in some of these provinces. So what we are actually seeing in Manitoba is an increase in people that are moving here because they want to secure that Canadian dream of actually being able to own a home, and other markets have made that impossible. We're also seeing it a lot too with people who have the ability still to do remote work. So their head office might be out of a major city center, but they elect to live in Winnipeg because it's more affordable and quality of life is so much higher. But yes, one of the major draws I find for a lot of people migrating to Winnipeg now is the affordability. So if you look at the national housing prices, usually Winnipeg falls at about 50% of what the national house price is. So far in 2025, when this video is being recorded, the average house price in Winnipeg sits at about $420,000. So for $420,000, you could buy a starter home here in one of the top tier neighborhoods, one of the neighborhoods that everybody fights to get into, or you could buy a $420,000, say, bungalow with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a fully finished basement, maybe with even more bedrooms in it. So close to 2,000 square feet of actual living space that is detached too, which I realize is important if you're coming from another market, and oftentimes with a garage. So you're able to afford a pretty substantial property here. And I just want to reinforce that is in a safe community too. We're not selling you something in a slum. When I say top tier community, it just means it's one of the most competitive and highly sought after communities to get into, but there are still many safe communities with great school divisions here that you can get into for that $420,000 price point. What I have found, and I find the most rewarding and thrilling part of selling real estate in Manitoba, is really how people's lifestyles improve when they move here. So for instance, I've had families tell me that now that they live in Manitoba, they can afford more family vacations every year. They're not so house poor from living in a more expensive city. In fact, I've had clients that went on their first vacation as a family because they could now afford it in their annual budget. I also want to draw attention to one more piece because it seems to come up a lot, especially with clients coming out of Ontario and BC. Our hydro rates here are incredibly affordable. In fact, people in Manitoba are often inclined to put in an electric furnace over a gas-fired furnace, just because our kilowatt hour rates are about a third of the rates in those other provinces. And that's because Manitoba is a huge hydroelectric exporter. We get our energy straight from the source, which is the dams up north. And as a result, we pay very little. It's coming straight from the source in Manitoba. So I don't even think we import electricity, but I could be wrong on that. Feel free to add that in the comments below. I just know that when you go to do laundry in Manitoba, you do it whenever you want to do it. There aren't peak rates or low rates. You just wash your laundry. You don't navigate around when there's peak or low rates, and the price is always pretty low. Like, it is not uncommon for people here to have condominiums with baseboard heaters that they pay only $50 a month in electric for. Of course, houses will be more, but we're not talking hundreds of dollars every month. We're talking like a reasonable amount even in the winter months. Of course, if you run your air conditioner through the summer, like, you're gonna have probably a bill in like the 200 averaged out range, depending on the size of the house. But we're not talking crazy numbers like if you were to run an electric furnace in Ontario. I also want to insert here that I get asked a lot about rental market here. And Winnipeg is its own beast. We do not have an organized rental market here. So what that typically means is that there aren't really any realtors that work in that space. So if you're calling around to find a realtor to help you find a rental, they aren't pulling from the MLS like they would in other markets. If you go onto realtor.ca, you're going to actually notice that there's very few rentals advertised there. And that's just because like the ones that are on there are oftentimes being rented out by the realtor that owns it. Or they've like had a special client that asked them to do it and they did it as a favor, but it's not usually a business model that we see here amongst realtors. Still to this day, at the time of recording, the best places I've found so far to find rentals in Winnipeg are places like Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, or rentals.ca usually has a good few options on there. But yeah, again, otherwise it's just going to be going to the property management websites and looking through their inventory. There is no centralized, easy to find place to look for rentals. It could be a great opportunity for somebody if ever they wanted to get into the space. It's just, at this point, it doesn't exist here. Even my husband and I, Logan, we own a few rental properties in Winnipeg, and even ourselves, we don't market them. We hire a property manager to advertise them for sale, place tenants, all that kind of stuff. That's how far removed we are from rentals as realtors here in Manitoba. Another question I get asked a lot is, what the heck do you do in Winnipeg? People really think we are like the frozen, frigid Arctic and that things just shut down all winter and we hibernate, but that is not the case at all. There is so much to do in Winnipeg. I do unfortunately want to start this off on a negative note, and that is about our downtown core. I know a lot of people moving from other cities find the downtown core to be one of the most desirable areas to live because they are in the hustle and bustle. You walk to work, you go out for dinner and drinks after, it's a great nightlife. Winnipeg's downtown core is not there yet. It is hustling and bustling through the day. However, in the evenings, I do find that people, for the most part, migrate out of the downtown core away, and it just becomes a little bit more dark, and it doesn't necessarily feel like a safe place to be in the evenings. Of course, if there's a major concert in town, or the Winnipeg Jets are playing, or there's some huge draw for people to be downtown in the downtown core here, that's a little bit different. There's safety in numbers, but otherwise, it's not the place you would necessarily choose as your destination for a night out on the town. Now, what I missed in my last video, and I don't know how I missed it, but I got roasted for it and I deserved it, is our amazing art scene. I didn't talk about it at all, but Winnipeg has so much to do. We have a diverse art scene here, and we have actually been called the cultural cradle of Canada. So for me to miss that is kind of embarrassing, and to those that I completely left out in the last video, I sincerely apologize. Winnipeg has everything going on. When I say everything going on, I'm talking galleries, I'm talking museums, I'm talking festivals, I'm talking fine dining, all of it. We are a culturally diverse community, and it shows. Let's talk about the Winnipeg Art Gallery, or WAG as it's often shortened to. It is actually one of the oldest public galleries, I think, in all of Canada. And it has some pretty cool displays, including a real feature on Inuit art. I don't know if you watch Amazing Race Canada, but it was actually featured on there just because it is such a comprehensive, and I think maybe the largest collection in all of Canada. The Royal Winnipeg Ballet is also a world-renowned ballet company, even performing for queens of the past. And every single year, they put on the Nutcracker, and it's a must-see for many Winnipeggers. And then there's, of course, Manitoba theater groups, including, and they do have programs for theater for young people too. So there's all kinds of ways to enjoy the arts, take them in, but also participate. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. Some beautiful, both classical and also modern performances that come out of there, which I've really enjoyed over the years. They've done like Star Wars, all kinds of covers, and it's really cool. So I've talked a lot about like indoor kind of venues and things to do throughout the year, but I really want to emphasize things that maybe aren't done indoors, just to show you like we live in this city year-round outdoors. Let's start with one that's a Manitoba favorite, is Festival de Voyageurs. It happens in February every year. I often miss it if I'm not paying attention. So by the time you see friends posting pictures, it can be over. So you got to be on top of it. But anyways, it's held at Fort Gibraltar, and it's everything Franco-Manitobain, and it's food, it's music, it's experiences. It's a ton of fun, very family oriented, but there are some nighttime events for adults as well. There's lots to do there. There's also the Forks. The Forks is an indoor market in the winter, but there are outdoor activities to do everywhere there. The most popular being getting out and skating on the river trail. So at the convergence of the two major rivers here, so the Red River and the Assiniboine River, that is where the Forks lies, and essentially you can get out and skate. This year I believe the trail was closer to 8 or 9 kilometers, But every year, usually they plow about 7 to 10 kilometers of river trail, and you honestly just get out there and skate as far as you want. There are warming huts along the way if you're worried about getting chilly, so you can take a break, warm up a little bit. There's also other activities too, like if you're not a big skater, there's fat biking, there's cross-country skis for rent. Like, there are options, and it's such a cool experience to get out and skate such a distance along your city. Let's talk about some of the festivals here. The Jazz Festival is usually a June event, so people get out, they enjoy jazz music, and it's across various venues throughout Winnipeg. There's Fringe Festival, Folk Festival, which is held in Birds Hill Provincial Park, and a lot of people will go out and they will camp out the whole weekend and enjoy these musical shows. It is not only for adults. I know people that go there with friends, and there's much for kids to do too. Like, it can be a whole family thing. Plus, you're around the water, so there's swimming opportunities. It's a really nice place to be for that festival. Folklorama is another popular one, and it still boasts that it's the world's largest and longest running multicultural festival, and it's held here right in Manitoba, and every year it's over 40 pavilions that you can go learn about another country, another culture, and experience performances, dining, cuisine. It's amazing, and like, you'll never get to all of the pavilions in 1 year. It's going to take years just to explore everything there is to offer there. Nuit Blanche Winnipeg happens in September, and that is an all-night arts festival too, which people love and really enjoy. Comedy is big here too, so not just at the clubs like at Rumors or Yuck Yucks, but there's also the Winnipeg Comedy Festival or improv. So there's a lot of options to do throughout the year, comedy-wise too. Another one of our favorites too is to go and explore the holiday lights at the Red River Exhibition Park. It's fun to get out and just spend some time admiring these huge light displays every year. Manitoba is also home to the largest snow maze, so you want to go get lost in the snow. Just outside of the city is this pretty cool snow maze, which in the summer becomes a corn maze. But honestly, there's tons of stuff to do. There's hay rides, everything, you name it, it's there. I would definitely recommend checking that out as a family. Every year too, they change the maze every year, so you might figure it out one year, but it'll be different the next year, so it's always a new challenge. And for what to do, I would be really missing a huge point if I didn't talk about our dining scene. We are a culturally diverse community, which means you have options for everything. Our sushi is fabulous. I get a lot of hate on that because we're so inland and far from the ocean, yet our sushi is top notch. I've had sushi on the coast too, and I would argue that some of Winnipeg's sushi is better than the stuff I've tried on the coast. We also have Korean barbecue or Brazilian barbecue, or you want Italian, there's Greek options, there's everything, down to borscht. There are places to eat here everywhere, and delicious food. I would argue that you would never be able to hit every restaurant in Winnipeg even over 5 years if you went out for dinner every single night. Like, there are so many amazing options. And actually in that relocation guide, we did narrow it down to some of our favorites just to give us recommendations in case you're curious too. Let's talk next about commutability. So I moved here from a small town. To me, driving in Winnipeg, things take a long time. However, that is not the case when you look at Canada as a whole. I have had people move here from British Columbia just recently, in fact, and one of the major draws was the commute from work every day. This particular client was spending 2 to 3 hours in their car on a bad day to get home. That's 6 hours every day if it was bad both ways, right? That's unheard of here. We complain about traffic in Winnipeg, and that means it took you maybe 40 minutes on a really bad day to get home. Now we're talking driving here too. Keep that in mind if you're driving your own car. I would say on average, if I polled my clients, most are within a 20-minute commute from their work, so 40 minutes both ways. Most are even closer than that, but let's say a 20-minute commute is not unheard of and probably the norm here. I will say when it comes to commutability though, that I do think that you need a car in Winnipeg. I got roasted on this from other people again on my last video when I said I think you should have a car if you're gonna live here. A lot of people argued that they do a lot of biking or busing, which is great. Our bus systems are good. However, if you're coming from major metropolitan areas like Toronto and Vancouver, it's going to feel like a downgrade for sure. We don't have the frequency of rides or the options, I would say, yet. Our rapid transit system, which is our bus system, is improving. They've added lines for the last few years. The infrastructure is really improving. There are rapid routes now, so you can get places much faster, but you're nowhere near those larger metropolitan areas yet. I will recommend here too that you should be getting winter tires for your vehicle if you plan on driving around in the city here. It makes a huge difference when it is frozen to have that extra tread. Swap them out in the summer, keep those tires nice and ready for winter. If you don't want to own a car here, there are still options as well. Like there's Peg City Co-op, in which you can do kind of like a rent share of cars. So you go to a location, pick up a car, drive it for as long as you need it, return it, and you're charged like for that usage, but you don't have to have the carrying costs of a car. Those are options. I will say usually the points of pickup are more centralized or downtown or in specific areas. So it's not a super developed service here yet, but it is a service that is being offered. I will also say too that since I recorded the last video, Uber has really exploded here. We're always a little bit behind when it comes to other major cities, but it is not uncommon to call an Uber and have it to you in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and the prices are quite affordable. So there are those options if you don't necessarily want to have the carrying costs of a vehicle. It's just, I'm a mom, I have 3 kids, they're in activities, two of them are in hockey at this time. So schlepping a hockey bag across the city, you need a vehicle. You're not always playing at the same rinks, and you know how it goes. Parents, there's just some commuting involved, and that's okay. I would say it's very common for Winnipeggers too to have 2 vehicles. Of our friend group, I believe that all actually are 2-car families. So it's most likely you're going to be having those costs of 2 cars. So if you're coming from a major city like Toronto or Vancouver, where you might only have 1 or no vehicle, it is definitely an expense to factor in. Another important thing to point out when it comes to commutability is not just to work, or schools or whatnot, but the importance of getting out of the city too. I hear in other major cities it can be so time prohibitive that by the time you get out of the city, you have like 12 hours at the lake and you're turning around to go back to the city. Like it can be that bad. That is not Winnipeg at all. I would say regardless of where you live within Winnipeg, I bet you could get to a body of water within an hour, depending on what you're looking for. And then of course, like if you're looking more for like the white shell and rocky terrain, there's Kenora, where we often still go because that's where we're from. And that's about a 2-hour drive from our house in the city. So you have options. I promise you have options, and you can get to the lake very easily, very quickly. I also wanted to talk about job prospects here. Winnipeg has a very, again, diverse and pretty stable economy within it. So let's talk first though about average household income. The average household income in Winnipeg is $102,000, just over $102,000. I think it was $102,300, but I'll put the number up here just to be safe. And that's coming out of the 2021 census. So average household income, $102,000-ish here. Average house price, about $420,000. And that, again, that's a detached home. The math pretty much maths in my opinion. However, let's look to other cities. In Toronto, I do apologize. I seem to be picking on you an awful lot today, but it was the easiest market to go and grab stats out of. So, especially when I don't have MLS access to these markets. But I went and looked it up, and the average detached home price at the time of recording this in Toronto was $1.2 million. So then I also looked at what their average annual household income is too, because it is higher than Winnipeg's. So again, here we're sitting at $102,000 and change, whereas in Toronto, you are making about $129,000 as an average household income. So yeah, between Toronto, Winnipeg, you as a household are making $27,000-ish on average less per annum. However, if you look at the mortgage rates, and I just took today's rates, so it was hovering at around a 4% interest rate on a 5-year fixed, and doing a 5% down payment, the difference in mortgage payments from $420,000 average price home here to a $1.2 million home in Toronto, we're talking about a difference of about $3,800 a month in mortgage payments, which tallies up to about $46,000 a year. So housing alone, you're already far more behind in Toronto. So this does kind of circle back to affordability, but I wanted to cover this in the job prospects here too, just because it kind of puts into perspective income earning potential when you take essentially income equality into effect. So back to that diversity in our job sector here, because it is quite diverse. There are some key industries here that deserve mention. And it's not necessarily what you would assume for a prairie province in the middle of Canada. First of all, aerospace is huge here. We are the largest aerospace company in Western Canada and the third largest in all of Canada. Our annual revenues in that regard exceed $1 billion. That's a big industry, especially for a smaller province. Also, because of our geographical placement, so this one makes sense, we are a huge manufacturer. We're central to the country. A lot of things are manufactured in Winnipeg because it makes sense to do so here. One that you're probably expecting, agribusiness, huge here. We're known for our crucial role, to be honest, in a lot of food production, and we have some major companies here that facilitate that. Creative industries are also actually pretty big here. Again, like I mentioned, we're the cultural cradle of Canada, as they say, but that means we have a lot of film productions and kind of arts created in our province. We're becoming more known for animations, visual effects, and even video games. So keep an eye out for where things are happening when you play that next video game or notice a movie with a lot of special effects. We're also really growing in the information and tech fields. So again, maybe not something you expect to hear coming out of Winnipeg, but we have some very large firms growing their tech divisions here. So just to kind of cover briefly who our biggest employers are, one of the largest would be Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, or WRHA, which you'll often see it used in short form. So essentially they oversee healthcare in the entire region, which is a lot of people, 14,000. One of the largest employers in the city. We actually do a lot of relocations for medical professionals that are moving here. So we gotcha. We know where you should live and what you should do. We have two very large teaching hospitals here. So the first being St. Boniface Hospital in St. Boniface, and the second being Health Sciences Center, which is a little closer to the downtown core. So I find every day we're getting people reaching out wanting to know where to live if they're working at either of those hospitals or other hospitals in the city too. And we're happy to help on that regard. Manitoba Hydro is another huge employer here, employing about 5,000 people throughout Manitoba. And that's because, again, we are a huge hydroelectric exporter. There's a few other major companies that hire here, so I'll kind of just list through those briefly. But essentially Great West Life, IGM Financial, Boeing Canada, which falls under that aerospace blanket, Patterson Global Foods, and James Richardson and Sons, which also fall under that agribusiness umbrella. And there's a lot of like newcomers or rising companies too, such as Aboriginal People's Television or APTN, which has really been growing as a top employer in Winnipeg. And also things like smaller credit unions too. Financial services have really been growing and employing a lot of people too. So there's something for everybody here. But if you look at it as a whole, the industries here, the companies here, they're quite diverse, which kind of creates that robust and stable landscape that has been the Winnipeg job market for the last several decades, I should say. So that moves me on to my next point, stability. So Winnipeg is a stable market, and that's not exciting. It doesn't make the news. It is not these peaks and valleys we see from other cities. We are a boring, stable economy, and that's okay by me. The good news, though, is if you are trying Winnipeg out, you do buy a house here, and then you turn around and decide it's not for you, and you decide to sell a year or two later, statistically speaking, things are looking pretty good for you. I was just pulling some numbers the other day, and over the last 20 years, was as far back as I went, but for a detached home in Winnipeg, the average annualized rate of return is about 6.18%, which is pretty good. Like a 6% return on investment every year in a housing market is pretty darn good. And of course, there's things you can do like forced depreciation where you do improvements and push that number even higher. There's ways to add value to your home here too. Always ask your realtor for advice though before taking on any projects, just to make sure you're doing what the market expects or gives return for. But yeah, 6% is your average rate of return. Now I looked at the last 30 years to get a sense of property values, and they also increased every year with the exception of one. And that one might not be a surprise. That was very recently in 2022 when interest rates were really, really climbing aggressively. So there were other market factors going on there. But every other year, value had gone up consistently. And just to put it into perspective too, in 2021, average house price was about $413,000 for single family detached. 2022, the year it dropped, it went down to about $399 and change. But then 2023, we're back up to 423. So, and that has been the pattern even looking back further than the last 30 years, the last 50 years. I think there were 3 years of decline, and same thing, the year following more than made up for that decline. So it's a matter of being able to hold a property maybe for another year if you have to, rent it out if you really hate Winnipeg so much and you have to get out of here. But honestly, like stability wise, you are buying into an incredibly stable market. The same is not to be said though for rentals. I will say that especially as housing shortages have become more profound, affordability has been on the decline. We are definitely seeing more people driven towards renting. Same goes with newcomers to Canada. They're more likely to rent in those first few years before buying, and we have seen an increase in net migration into Manitoba. So this has all kind of created the perfect storm in the rental market, in which it is incredibly hard to find even affordable rentals now here, with many being close, if not on par, with what you would pay if you were buying a place, if not more expensive in some cases. So just something to keep in mind. The rental market hasn't been nearly as stable here. Okay, I apologize because I'm only getting to weather now, but I meant to talk about this right off the hop. It just turns out I'm pretty long-winded and one point led to another. So let's get into it though. Weather in Manitoba. Yes, we are called Winterpeg. Yes, it gets cold here. At the time of filming this, we are in a deep freeze. I think it has been in the minus 20s without any wind chill for the last week, 10 days maybe. It feels like a long time, but it's probably not that bad, to be honest. I checked just prior to recording this video too, just to see, because we were getting an extreme weather warning alert here, because with wind chill, it does feel like minus 40 out there, according to Environment Canada. Now, there were a lot of people on my last video that argued that the temperatures never hit this, and I just want to emphasize that this is with wind chill, and yes, with wind chill, we have hit minus 50 in Winnipeg. So before you come for me, definitely check those stats. Because it can happen. Is it common? No. Does it happen every year? No. But it can happen. It can. One thing I do want to point out is the difference in how wind chill does come into effect. I've kind of highlighted that here, but I grew up 2 hours to the east. I thought the weather was the same. However, I grew up in a very hilly, more dramatically inclined area with natural shelter, just because of the varying topography, I guess you would say. We're flat farmers fields here. Like, we are wide open to the elements. So when that wind does start barreling through the city, it is cold. So on those windy winter days, it feels cold. It feels colder than it does in a community that is more sheltered and protected. There's no denying that. It does feel colder. Despite all of that, I'm talking about it being cold, about the wind chill with it hitting -40, and that we're in day 7 to 10, somewhere in that range of this cold snap. People adapt. And that is one thing I want to stress. Yes, day 1, day 2, was I a big baby? Did I cuddle up on my couch with my book and my hot tea and my favorite slippers and stay warm inside? Absolutely. Do you get stir crazy? Absolutely. Do you learn and get outside? Absolutely. What I will say in Winnipeg is you need to dress for the elements. So for me, that has meant getting a longer coat. I know that sounds so simple. My mom friends and I, we all joke that we all wear a sleeping bag to our kids' hockey games, but essentially it's a longer coat. It keeps me warm. I do not feel the cold when I am wearing that jacket. It's too hot for some things. It's that hot, but having the proper gear makes a huge difference. I'm not gonna lie, there have been days recently, especially if I was like waiting outside for the school bus, that I have had my long johns on, or thermal underwear, I think they're called now. I feel like I'm dating myself if I say long johns, but essentially long johns underneath, just an extra layer, and that takes the edge off and also helps you feel warm throughout the day. You don't have to be cold. Like, it's an option up to you. I believe it's a Scandinavian saying that there's no such thing as bad weather, there's just bad clothes. And it's true. Like, you can be warm. You are going to want to make sure that you are limiting how much exposed skin, of course, is out there when it's really cold outside. But beyond that, like, be safe, but get out there. Another thing I also wanted to talk about here, because I have some clients moving here that think I'm a huge liar, especially last year. So we had like one really bad winter 2 years ago, and then this past winter, like 2023 going into 2024, I should say, it was very warm. It was a warm winter. There were actually some golf courses advertising tee times in December. Typical for us? No. Is it probably related to climate change? Absolutely. Things are changing, but just to put things into perspective, like, we're not necessarily talking these deep cold snaps for 2 months at a time. And I have no scientific evidence for this, but it's another thing I do notice and have noticed personally, and I've had clients say when they are moving here too, is the difference between a dry cold and a wet kind of damp cold. So people moving from BC swear that our air is drier. I believe it. We're not near an ocean. And as a result, though, it doesn't feel as cold. Whereas those that live in BC, they say when it gets to really cold temperatures, I heard -8 was a level they were just hitting the other day, which was very cold for BC, or very cold for Vancouver, I should say. They were complaining that the wetness though, it like seeps into your pores and you kind of just carry that weight around and it just feels colder. And I do believe that, just like humidity makes a huge difference too in the summers. I do believe that, I feel that. So no scientific evidence backing this statement up, but people do argue that our cold feels different here. So it's not as cold as those in damp climates. But look at our averages and you'll see like cold, yes, December, January usually being the coldest. Let's say January is the coldest. And you think like average high is around -10, average low is around -18. It's really not that bad, especially, and I'm gonna get there next, for our summers. I would argue that Winnipeg has some of the best summer weather. So when it comes to our summers, we get outdoors here. We are a comfortable temperature here. We are not go out your door and you are sweating to death. You can't go sit on a patio in the evening or even during the day because it's so hot. Don't get me wrong, we get some plus 32s in there, plus even higher, but like honest mid to high 20s, very common here in the summer. I believe like last summer it was around 70 days of that temperature and consistent. So you are getting out, you're able to enjoy the full day. There's not a huge variation in temperatures through from morning to evening. It's kind of just nice, steady temperature in my opinion. And statistically speaking, like throughout the year, especially if you're coming from somewhere like BC, we are a sunny province. So 316 days of sun every year, which puts us top 3 in Canada for major cities with sun. So a lot of people move here from BC and they also tell me, I miss the sun. I can't be in the gray all the time. And I get it. Like that plays a huge part on mental health. So there are a lot of people I find that just might move away, but move back because they miss the sunlight. And I can't imagine not having that sun all the time. I don't think I could honestly do it myself. So, but beautiful summers here. You will be able to get to the lake in less than an hour and enjoy it. And you will have beautiful weather to enjoy it too. Now, if I haven't convinced you yet, you're still worried about the weather here. I get it. Again, important things. There are things you can do to take the edge off too. So having a vehicle with command start makes a huge difference. Now, don't come at me. I know, like, let's not idle unnecessarily and contribute more to climate change. I get it. However, on those minus 40 days, to take the edge off, command start your car, give it 5 minutes, warm up, makes a huge difference. Also, having an attached garage, I can speak personally about this, makes a huge difference as well. When it's minus 29 out, like it was this morning when I woke up, I checked the temperature, minus 29 out. Our attached garage, even though it is not fully insulated, like there's about half of it, we still have to insulate at some point. We're talking, it's minus 8 in there, right? So it doesn't feel nearly as cold getting into my car as it would if it had been parked outside. It makes a huge difference. And again, dressing for the weather. I mentioned this already, but getting those longer jackets, I'll full blown go influencer mode here on you, but it's worth the investment. I got the Aritzia Super Puff, which is actually a pretty well priced jacket, and that is the one that I was talking about earlier that goes pretty much midway between knee and ankle, and it keeps me warm year round. It makes a huge difference, and price point is actually pretty good when you look at other options like Canada Goose, which is one I was considering at the same time. It was a fraction of the price. One thing I will caution you though about is Winnipeggers, you're allowed to complain about the weather all you want. However, if you are not dressed for it, zip it. We have no sympathy for people that do not dress properly and then complain about the weather. Dress properly first and then come complain. So schooling is another thing I wanted to talk about too, because that's important, especially if you're moving here with young children. I heard a study just recently that they did a study of those moving from larger city centers to other cities, western provinces, or even Atlantic. And essentially what they were asked was what was the most popular age range for those moving, and the answer was actually 0, because people are moving with children because now they can't fit in their condominium once baby comes along and all the things that come with baby. They're just this little, but the amount of stuff that they come with is so much and it takes up a lot of space. So I get it. Move to Winnipeg, get more space. But that leads me back to the school discussion. Sorry, off topic. But we have several larger school divisions here. So it's kind of one big umbrella and then it's divided up into not even quadrants, just various areas of the city. So what that means is there's several different school divisions. Now, people often ask me, what is the best school division? And the answer is there isn't one. What I will say, and what I have found, is that There are good schools within every division, but there are also not the best schools within every division. There's no one division that I would say is better than the rest. What I will say though, if you're moving here and you don't have knowledge of the city at all, is you need to be really cognizant of where you move, because the school catchment that you will fall into will depend specifically on your address. And there are streets in Winnipeg that are the dividing line between one school and another. If you're on this side, you go to this school. If you're on this side, you go to the other. There are even back lanes that divide. So it's important to know what your catchment is, and most recent catchment too, because the lines are changing, schools are being added, new lines are being drawn. So it's important to know what your catchment is. There is a thing in Winnipeg called School of Choice, and that is where you apply to be in a school that isn't your natural catchment. However, popular schools, the schools that are most renowned, I would say, for some programs, they're tricky to get into. Like, the odds of getting in when you apply for that school of choice is very slim. Like, there's more rejections than there are acceptances. So just something to be wary of. We can always advise what catchment your house is going to be in that we're looking at, but it's something to be very wary of. Another thing too I want to draw to your attention, especially those coming from other provinces in which there is a junior kindergarten and then a senior kindergarten. Manitoba doesn't have that. We have essentially what would be senior kindergarten. So it starts at age 5 or kids turning 5 in that birth year. That's when they start going to public school here. There's no programs except for those that are privatized prior to that. So you are paying out of pocket if you have younger children at that junior kindergarten level. So just something to factor in. I have had people that actually delayed their move to Winnipeg by a year just to take advantage of junior kindergarten in their province. Is it the right answer? I don't know. It depends on you and your family. Some people want their kids to start with the kindergartners here and move through. But honestly, whatever works for you, your family, that's a decision you're going to have to make because there are financial implications if you're coming here for that junior kindergarten and paying for privatized daycare. Now, the province did instill a new daycare system that is a $10 a day thing. It's still tricky. However, new initiatives have just been announced to increase daycare/childcare spaces, but we're not there yet. It's still tricky to get into those subsidized $10 a day programs. So just something to be wary of. Just reach out to me. Happy to share, happy to advise where my kids go, where some of the better programs were for those kind of junior years before they moved on to kindergarten. And one of our kids is still in his last year of this pre-kindergarten phase. So, but yeah, something to be wary of. Another thing I want to draw attention to here about the schooling portion, especially kindergarten, is that you pay attention to the schedules here. So it is not a standard here necessarily for kindergartners to go to school full time. So usually it's a morning program or an afternoon program. So your child goes to school from like 8:30 to noon and you pick them up in the afternoon. Not ideal for a working parent. There usually are extended day options, but it's not ideal. Like, nobody wants to be interrupting their day midway to pick up kids and facilitate that. There are some that have tried a 2-day on, 3-day off, and then 3-day on, 2-day off kind of program too. So full days, but not 5 days a week. Those do exist too, but maybe not necessarily for long. Louis Riel School Division is one of the school divisions here that this past year kind of did a pilot program of full day kindergarten. Wasn't in all schools, but it was just a test. From what I've heard, it went really, really well. People loved it. So it might be something we see expanding throughout the city. In terms of options though, you have so many options in Manitoba for childcare. So there's, of course, like the typical Montessori programs or like kindergarten prep programs. There's French immersion and also like DSFM, which is even more French programming. So that's Division Scolaire Franco-Manitobain. I'm probably butchering that, so I apologize for my Franco-Manitobans, but in which essentially when your kid leaves for school that day, it's all in French. So everything is in French. There's no English essentially spoken along the way. So for those that really want the French immersive experience, it's even more intense than French immersion. And beyond that, there's other languages now that you can take schooling in. The province saw a need as the community has become more and more diverse, and as a result, they've added a ton of programming into regular schools just so that you can learn in a variety of other languages. It's really cool. If you're looking to move here and go into privatized school, I will say we have some of the best private schools here too, in my opinion. And also, when I'm talking to people from other provinces, much more affordable private schools here too. Based on parents I've been speaking to, like, we're talking a difference of usually around $8,000 to $10,000 a year for going to a private school here versus in another city. So it is pretty substantial over the course of 13 years of private schooling. That really does add up, right? So it's pretty cool. And then when it comes to post-secondary education, there are great options here, like fabulous. We have 2 world-renowned universities, the University of Winnipeg, the University of Manitoba, both of which have amazing programs. You want to become a lawyer, you want to become a doctor, you've got options here, right? And then really good PhD and master's programs as well. I did my master's of business administration at the U of M, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. So highly, highly, highly recommend. And then colleges too, I would say the most popular or notable being Red River College, because they probably have one of the most robust offerings of different programs and really good instruction there too. And again, 2 major facilities in the city so to operate out of. So I would recommend either, but yeah, really good post-secondary. It is actually quite common, especially when I've been speaking with my friends from here, to stay within Winnipeg when you're doing your post-secondary, whereas where Logan and I grew up, you were moving away most likely to do any post-secondary education, but not uncommon for people to do their entire schooling here, which is really cool and makes it more affordable too, right? Next, sporting. If you are a sports fan, you like to spectate, watch, or if you are an active participant, there are options for you. We have really good sports teams here in Winnipeg. So at the time of recording, the Winnipeg Jets were actually at the top of their division and top of the league. So go Jets, go. We're still working on our playoff performance, but I feel like this could be the year. Now it's in video. Same with our CFL team. So the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they made it to the Grey Cup this year. So really good high level sports in terms of national programs. The Manitoba Moose are our AHL team here. So Winnipeg Jets tickets, like especially when they're performing really well, they can be hard to come by and they can be expensive, but a good secondary option is the Manitoba Moose. And you can get your family there for a weekend game in the afternoon for very affordable prices. And they have really good in-game entertainment too for the kids. Like my kids love going to those games. The Goldeyes are our minor league baseball team. They put out a really good performance, and again, it's kind of like down on Waterfront Drive, so beautiful summer nights, lots to do, lots to explore, lots to enjoy. Enjoy a night out if you're going to one of those games. The Sea Bears play in the CEBL, and they brought a professional basketball team to our city, which is so cool. I have not yet gotten to see a game. However, everybody I've talked to that did, they say it's so fun, like super amazing. Same thing, in-game entertainment, getting the kids involved, getting families involved, and just a kind of fun and different experience to have. If you're into professional soccer, we have a team for that too. So FC Valor plays out of the Bombers Stadium. So again, really nice venue, really nice place to go and enjoy as a family. Again, super affordable price point too. I would also not be doing a solid service if I didn't talk about the professional teams that our universities put forward. I have loved going to watch volleyball games, etc. at the university level. There are some real top performers in those games. And if you're into horse racing, we have something for that at Assiniboia Downs. There really is something for everybody in terms of spectator sports. I'm missing some, I'm sure. But there is something, I assure you. Now, let's talk about being an active participant in sports here, because people are going to automatically assume it's just hockey, 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 which you're not wrong. There's a lot of hockey here, but there's a lot of other options too. But if you are looking to play hockey, there are very competitive leagues you can sign up for that play at a high level, or if you're more of a beginner like me and you want something that's a little more slow paced, there are options for that. Even in women's hockey, there are options. Another popular one here is actually competitive swimming. That might come as a surprise, but we have the Pan Am pool here, which was host to the Pan Am Games a couple of years, and has also been a part of the Canada Summer Games too. It's world renowned, known for swimming competitions and also diving programs too. We have a lot of really good divers in this city, so it's a place worth checking out. I love it because it's a full-blown facility with running track too, so if you want to get out and kind of just see different things on one of those really cold winter days, it's a good place to check out, is that Pan Am pool. If you're a soccer lover, there are leagues for days here. You could sign up and play soccer many times a day, even throughout the summer. And even in the winter, we have several larger facilities that are designed specifically for soccer. So you can play soccer year-round here. And then, of course, there's many other sports to know, but I'm going to cover kind of a random selection, both popular and maybe ones you wouldn't have thought of. So curling, of course, golfing, roller derby is big here too, cricket, skateboarding, speed skating, lacrosse. Honestly, if you can think of it, there's a sport here for you. Now I'm trying to end this on a high note and really with the most important part, and that is the people. The people of Winnipeg are some of the most amazing human beings you will ever meet. Winnipeg is a big city, statistically speaking, with the number of people that live here. However, it feels like a small community, and it has always felt like a small community to me. I never once felt when we were moving here like it was hard to make friends or get to know new people or be welcomed into a social setting. We have made some truly deep and lasting relationships here, whether it be friends from my son's hockey team that I cherish and will take for life with me, who we giggle and travel together now for fun without kids, or just book clubs or mom friends from schools. Like really, there are people to get to know and love throughout this city, and they are just good people at their core. And if you need proof, it's on our license plates. Our license plates legitimately say Friendly Manitoba, and it's just because that is who we are at our core, is a community of friendly people that look out for one another and would love to welcome you into. So in conclusion, as a transplant to Winnipeg, would I make the same decision I did? Yes, even when I'm recording this in that dead cold that is a Winnipeg cold snap. But it is absolutely worth it. I'm gonna get outside, go for a walk, enjoy that sun on my face, even though there's a cold warning out right now. It is not that bad. I am not worried walking down the street, looking over my shoulder that somebody is about to attack me in a violent way. It is a safe city, in my opinion, despite what the headlines tell you. I can't wait to go out, spend some time. Logan and I would both agree that we feel we have moved to a super family-oriented community, an affordable community that allows us to live a really awesome lifestyle too, where we get to commute only 20 minutes back home every day, not lose that time with our family. It's built to have quality time together with the ones you love. That's truly what I believe. And now, a shameless self-promotion, if you are considering moving here, feel free to reach out to myself. Again, my team and I, that is what we do. We specialize in relocations to Winnipeg, and that includes like advising where to live, but also like if you don't know anything about the city, kind of doing those initial tours to get you comfortable, to let you see all of the amenities different areas have to offer, getting you familiarized with the school divisions, all of it. We're happy to advise on all of it. We want you to feel comfortable with where you're living, and part of that comes with just a information gathering, right? And that's what we're here for. If you're kind of early on in those preliminary steps, not really wanting to like have that conversation, feel free to just reach out. I'm happy to send you that relocation guide I mentioned earlier. It's got general information on different communities, where to eat, where to live, where like what our weather is like, all that kind of stuff too. just in case you need it. Happy to share that. Again, my email is hello@queenteam.ca, and I will be sure that the team gets you the information you need. But again, thanks for watching today, guys. I'm still blown out of the water with how many people have reached out from one video alone just to help them relocate to Winnipeg. It has been awe-inspiring and driven a lot of our business over the last few years, so I really do appreciate it. You guys are awesome, and just keep being your awesome selves and come join us and be awesome in Winnipeg. Take care, guys.